How many of you have heard of the Promise to Protect campaign? I'm going to get to teach again this service. So the Promise to Protect campaign is a campaign that is being led by indigenous organizers that are at Standing Rock. The Promise to Protect campaign is a campaign that is rallying people across the country and across the world to be in solidarity with and be prepared to answer the call to go and protect those sacred lands, because those lands have been under consistent threat by the Keystone Pipeline construction. Those lands and those people are struggling to survive, but they know that with others answering that call to protect the land, protect their livelihood, protect the land that we here reside on temporarily, that call is a promise to protect this earth for those of us who will be here 200, 300, 1,000 years from now. And I bring this up because last month I was at a training for the Promise to Protect campaign. This training was an invitation. It happened at the Greenpeace warehouse in Oakland. And it was for those of us who were there to sign up to be ready to answer that call, whether it's to show up at Standing Rock in solidarity or to do work, ministry, and witness in this area to protect indigenous lands and our earth home. So the organizers there had us do a few activities throughout the day. And one of those activities was a soccer game. I come from a family of soccer players. My grandfather was a goalkeeper in Egypt, my dad was a goalkeeper in Egypt, and I was a goalkeeper here in the United States. Much to the chagrin of my mother, who was always terrified I was going to get my braces kicked in when I dove at the ball. Never happened. So when they told us we were going to do a soccer game, I was excited. They asked for 5 volunteers, and so those 5 volunteers were put on one team. And then they asked for 10 volunteers, and those 10 volunteers were the other team. So it was a 5-on-10 soccer match. Obviously, this was an activity for a direct action and organizing training, so there was a lesson there, and I was on the team with 10, and I'm like, we're gonna play the oppressors, where the system is built to support us. Then they threw in another thing. That team of 5 players got to set 3 rules that the team of 10 had to follow. The first 3 rules that they set were we had to play always linked up with another player, that we could only kick the ball with our non-dominant foot, and that we could only score a goal if we kicked backwards. I suddenly realized, oh, we're not the oppressors, they are the oppressors. The system is built to support them, and the referees are there to support them and make sure we follow the rules. So, yeah, I'm a little bit of a rebel, if you'll say. And so instantly myself and others on the team were like, we're not gonna follow these rules, forget it. And so we refused to link, we tried for a minute, we decided no. We refused to keep our arms linked. We refused to kick with our non-dominant foot. And we refused to kick and score goals backwards. And so while we were trying to do this, and we even tried to not play the game anymore because they kept adding rules that we had to follow. We weren't allowed to talk at one point. There were some more and more rules were getting added to keep us in line. Eventually, we ended the game, and everybody at the training came together and shared their observations. And I, in my social justice, super enlightened self, was like, they were the oppressors. I was really excited to be an oppressor at first, and then I realized, oh no, we're the oppressed because we have more people, but we don't have the system in our favor or under our control. The team of 5 said, how do you feel like you're oppressed? We only had 5 people. Then someone in the circle who hadn't been a part of the game, that had been observing, asked a question. Why did those 2 teams follow the rules at all? Why didn't they just work together and create a new game? Yeah. Yeah. I deflated in that moment where I was like, I have to learn something today. I realized in that moment that I didn't think big enough, that my imagining was limited, even with all of that I have learned, that there is still a bigger, unimaginable picture beyond what I know. In that moment, I forgot what I was fighting for. Was I fighting to win against my fellow players? Yes. But maybe I could have been fighting to liberate all of us from a set of rules that had all of us at a disadvantage in different ways. I knew what I was fighting against. I forgot what I was fighting for. I forgot my universalism, that universalism that says, liberation for all, let's work together and make this world a better place. I was literally fighting against people. Universalism that would have had us combining our efforts and our visions, thinking beyond the rules that we had all been set with, imagining beyond the game that was there. What if we had just played and had hope and imagination and created something different? What if we had played Foursquare? What if we got some chalk and just drew on the asphalt instead? What if we had just done that? What if we had worked together? That question of why didn't the 2 teams work together is a question that echoes some of the principles of organizing and action of generations past and now. Today we see movements like the Poor People's Campaign, where you have people from different aspects of different movements coming together, fighting for healthcare equality, racial equality, democratic rights, and democracy. I'm not going to necessarily say any party is more important than the other, but voting rights. There we go. We have folks that are doing environmental organizing, working within educational systems to change where funding comes from, not from pipelines. Working out in different countries, working to find alternatives to energy that also create jobs. These principles of today's movements are similar to the principles of organizers in the past. Like our chalice lighting read by Reverend Neal this morning, Helen Todd was a labor organizer in the early 1900s, and she had a rallying cry of bread and roses for all. Who here has heard of the Bread and Roses strike or the Bread and Roses movement? You heard of the song? So Bread and Roses, while Helen Todd came up with those words at the start, was crafted into a poem by James Oppenheim. And then the phrase of bread and roses for all was embedded into a labor movement in the early 1900s. Rose Schneiderman, an immigrant woman, used these words at a rally where she said, "The worker must have bread, but she must have roses too." Rose Schneiderman was a labor organizer, and she spoke those words after a fire at a factory that killed 146 workers, 123 of which were women between the ages of 14 and 23. Rose Schneiderman writes or spoke in her rally, "What the woman who labors wants is the right to live, not simply exist. The right to life as the rich woman has the right to life, the sun and music and art." In the 1912 textile strike in Lawrence, Massachusetts, often known as the Bread and Roses strike, Rose Schneiderman and others were part of a multi-ethnic movement led by immigrant women. These women workers were fighting long hours and low pay after having their pay cut because they were given the right to less hours. These women and children went and rallied for their lives, for their rights. They protested for 10 straight weeks. The mill owners thought that this would die out soon. They didn't think that anything would come of these people coming together in those first few days because they represented immigrant workers from 50 different countries, speaking 20 different languages. But that idea of fighting for bread and roses resonated through all of them. And after those 10 weeks, they got a raise. This rallying cry of bread and roses is a unifying cry that has been a part of labor organizing and union organizing for generations. It is an imagining and hopeful cry. We fight for bread, but we fight for roses too. In describing this movement, Sam Worley writes an article and says that political movement whose demand is mere subsistence suffers from a poverty of the imagination. Survival is far from enough. As I mentioned earlier in the observance of Ramadan, this month is a time of remembrance. And it's a time where we remember the gifts that we have been given, the gifts that we don't ask for, and a time to remember that there are those in our world who are not given their fair share of those gifts. It is a time when we remember that there is beauty in the world if we are just willing to see it. And it is a time when people are denied the right or ability to experience that beauty. Whether or not Helen Todd or Rose Schneiderman or James Oppenheim meant to do it, they created something incredibly universalist with this bread and roses rallying cry, this bread and roses movement song. It is something that resonates deeply with our principles. If you look through those words, I'm not going to list them for you because I don't have them memorized. But if you look through them, you see the bread and the roses woven. And a fun fact, our hymnal actually has the words of bread and roses as one of the hymns. So it is something that ties into our generation. So what do we do with the bread and roses that these women, these mothers of the movement, have given us? Since you did such a good job with the gathering hymn, I'm going to make you sing a little bit now. So there's a movement song that is coming from the children and youth of today. And I'm going to teach it. It's pretty simple, and you can join in when you've got it. We're gonna rise up till it's won. We're gonna rise up till it's won. We're gonna rise rise up till it's won. Keep on singing that and see what echoes come up. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. We're gonna rise up till it's won. We carry it forward. We carry it forward knowing that it is a message, a gift, an imagination that has been given to us by the mothers in our movements. We carry forward their legacy, their imagination. We carry it forward, and then, as the song that our choir sang earlier today invites us to do, we share it with the children in our movements, the youth in our movements. We give them the hope that was given to us. So this sermon obviously has a justice bend to it on Mother's Day, and I am your executive director of your UU Justice Ministry of California, so I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't do that. But I do honor that it is Mother's Day, and it is a deeply personal day for many as well, in different ways. So on this Mother's Day, it is important for us to remember and honor and celebrate all those who have nurtured us, who have supported us, who have mothered us, and who have imagined for us. On this day, we can take a moment to remember those who have been the people in our lives who have given us bread and roses. And I invite you to remember today, who are those people in your life? Who are the people you want to remember? The people you want to honor for the nurturing they have given you? Whose values, whose lessons, whose imaginations live on in you? Whose hope do you carry forward? Whose hope do you support, nurture, and mother today? For those of you who have nurtured, mothered, and supported today, and days past and years past, I say thank you. Thank you for planting those seeds of love, generosity, and imagination in our lives. Thank you for the possibilities you have fostered. And for all of us, as we leave here, we can think about the ways we can mother too. Think about what we want to nurture, what seeds of imagination, of possibility, of love we want to plant. The seeds that we may not see grow and give shade, but in our imagination, we know that they will do it for so many in years to come. Bread and roses. May we fight for both together.